And we're back once again, only on it's last call to alcohol, only on the last call podcast.com. And joining me here this time around, we had him on a while back talking about the quarterback change, coaching. He was in the heart of everything with Cleveland. Now, almost a full football season later, there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of, I guess, moving parts, and he's back to explain that and a whole lot more. I give you once again from Sparks Scouting itself. I give you Cleveland Brown insider draft aficionado. I give you is Bill Sparks. So, Bill, let's start off here with
Yeah.
this is who they've interviewed for the coaching. So,
hmm
first, let's ask a big question. What was the final straw for Stefanski in your mind? Like, when did they know? Okay, we got to move on because they were even trying to trade him. So, when did it get to that point where it's like we got to move on from this guy?
I think the biggest point was when they finally turned over play calling to Tommy Rees, and now he's fully in the hot seat in terms of in-game management, in-game adjustments, the flow of the game, and all the things that you expect a head coach to do. And it still was a struggle. There were still a lot of issues with play calls getting in on time. There were still a lot of issues with in-game adjustments, especially going into the half, coming out of the half, and it just still looked disjointed. And I think at that point, it's the final straw. And we forget that Kevin Stefanski was a hire by Jimmy Haslam. He wasn't Andrew Barry's guy. Stefanski was hired first and joined the search for the GM and then ended up leading into Andrew Barry. So Andrew Barry wasn't chosen by Kevin Stefanski. And I think the matter of fact is that this roster is probably another 2 years away in terms of a talent deficit. And at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, okay, how long can we put up with these poor issues of in-game management? We put up with these culture issues, one of the most penalized teams in the NFL. At a certain point, if you're going to have those types of mistakes, let's get a younger head coach in here. Let's get a young mind along the lines of a Sean McVay, the way he was hired with the Rams, and let him learn on the job rather than Kevin Stefanski, who's on the older side of the fence and is probably better suited for a team to win now, so to speak.
So here's the coaching search update. Granted, this has
Mhm.
changed, so we'll note the changes here. So they've already interviewed Schwartz, Todd Munkin, Aiden Durde, Mike McDaniel, who's now pulled his name out, Dan Pitcher, Tommy Reese, and they're waiting on Chris Shula, Nathan Shielhaus, and
Mhm.
they interviewed and they have interviewed Grant Udinski, so he's in the already interviewed.
Yep.
What are you hearing? Like, who are the favorites? Who are the long
Yeah.
shots? What are you hearing in terms of like who Andrew Barry likes?
Yeah, so the two names on the list that are the two top favorites is Grant Udinski, Jacksonville offensive coordinator, and Nathan Shielhaas, Los Angeles Rams passing game coordinator. Both of them, in terms of what you're going to get as a head coach, are very similar. You look at Udinski, runs a lot of heavy and 11 personnel, three wide receiver sets. His passing game, it opens things up, but he's very flexible. Whereas Stefanski was very rigid with his scheme, and it's my scheme is the scheme is the scheme, and I'm not going to build around my players. Udinski is the polar opposite of that. I'm going to build a scheme that benefits my players and use my talent to the best of my ability. Nathan Shielhaas, same way, runs a lot of 11 personnel, a little bit heavier on the 13 personnel, three tight end sets in Los Angeles, a lot of pre-snap motion, wants to play fast, play up tempo, wants his offense to play up tempo and be able to read and react to things in front of them. And both of these guys are on the younger side of things. They would both be, if Udinski or Shielhaas ended up with the job, they would be the youngest head coach in the NFL. Udinski, 30 years old, Nathan Shielhaas, 35 years old. Right now, those are the two favorites. Outside of that, there really isn't anybody. Chris Shula was scheduled to interview. He's pulled his name out and likely ends up as the Pittsburgh head coach, potentially Jesse Minter. Uh, Announced as the Baltimore Ravens head coach, so he's likely done. I just don't see a world where it's not Shielhaas or Udinski. I'm completely out on the Jim Schwartz as head coach conversation. Everything we've chastised Kevin Stefanski for about the lack of in-game adjustments and the lack of game flow management, we saw Jim Schwartz go through in Detroit. We've also seen Jim Schwartz go through as the defensive coordinator in Cleveland. And if you're going to expect Cleveland Brown fans to build this roster over the next 2 years, let's get a guy that can learn on the job, learn on the fly. And in 2 years, he'll either be 32 years old or 37 years old and be ready to take over the league.
So here's the question everybody, I guess, in Cleveland is asking about these two guys, Nathan and Grant.
Mhm.
Why should we have faith in them? Because they've never been a head coach. They've
Yep.
never even called plays. I mean, let's get that through. It's Grant Udinski's the offensive coordinator in title only, but Liam Cohen calls the plays. Nathan
Mhm.
Scheelhaus, passing game coordinator, but still Sean McVay calls the plays. So again, like it's one thing to do all these things, and for every you know Mike McDaniel we get, who we'll say he's a good coach, you get a lot of offensive coordinators like Callahan from the Titans, Brian
Yeah.
Callahan, who it's like, oh God, they are in over their head. They have no idea what they're doing. So for Browns fans, like, what gives you confidence that Dinsky and Shieldhouse are quality candidates when it's like they've never been in charge of anything, let alone even being in charge of a full team?
Understandable. The biggest thing that when you're looking at one of these two guys and what they can bring is not necessarily being that wonderkind boy wonder play caller, because we just witnessed that with Kevin Stefanski coming over from Minnesota. He was supposed to be this excellent play caller, and it worked well for a year or two, but when the roster got old, he never developed, he never adjusted, and then had to give up play calling twice. And there's apprehension in having guys that have never called plays at the NFL level. Shieldhaas has called plays before. It was at the collegiate level during his time at Iowa State. But the apprehension is there and it's 100% believable. But the thing is, if I'm looking at a head coach, it's nice if you can call plays, but a head coach has to be able to manage the game. They have to be able to manage the inflow adjustments. They have to be able to manage those things on the fly. But also, they need to be able to have their hands in everything. The head coach should be a CEO. They shouldn't be the accountant. They shouldn't be the marketing coordinator. They need to be the CFO, the CEO, and hire people in place to run the offense and to run the defense and be a part of both rooms. And the best part about it with Grant Udinski and Nathan Shielhaas, both of them are coming from places, in Udinski's case from Liam Cohen and Kevin O'Connell, and in Shielhaas's case, Sean McVay, where they've had guys who did exactly that. They were offensive masterminds who called plays, absolutely, but also designed plays and designed a playbook that could live on beyond them. And I think that's what you're getting if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, and that's a stark contrast from what we've had in Stefanski, is that he's going to come in and help develop the framework for an offense, and then he's going to put someone in place and say, "Hey, here's how we can make this offense work." But both of them are flexible enough to say, hey, if 11 personnel is not working, let's go to 13 personnel. If 13 is not working, let's go to 12. It's not so much of a, hey, we only run 12 personnel here. That's all we're going to run. It's a flexible, fluid offense. And when you have a lack of talent offensively, you have to maximize what you have. And by doing that, that allows both of these guys to have the ability to succeed.
Like the worry is, and I've been this is and I've seen this in real time.
Mhm.
When you if you have a guy like an Andy Reid or Sean Payton, they've seen everything, they can hold things together. When you have an ex-player, they can sort of do that because they could look at anybody, whether it's Shador, Miles Garrett, somebody like a Mike Vrabel, or even I'll throw D'Amico Ryans and look at him and go, I've been in your
Yeah.
shoes. I know what's going on. Trust me. Listen to me and I'll get you through this because I know I have been in your place.
Mhm.
How do these guys get buy-in when they're going to look and go, Grant Dinsky never played in the league. He's 30 years old. Miles Garrett's about the same age as him. Nathan Shieldhouse, same thing. It's like, okay, why should we trust you when you've never played and you're about the same age as us, coach?
And that's a fair conversation. Shieldhaas has a better idea of it because he's been on the gridiron. He played at the University of Illinois, then went to Iowa State, then ended up at Los Angeles. Udinski had a little bit of a rougher road. Went to Towson, played a little bit, and then ended up at Baylor and Carolina. And it's a tough conversation to have with both of them, especially when you have a younger head coach. How do you get the buy-in? But the biggest thing is youth isn't a knock anymore. We've seen right now Sean McVay and Mike McDonald in Los Angeles and Seattle, two of the younger head coaches are in the NFC Championship game. Ben Johnson, one of the younger head coaches, was in the NFC divisional round. Youth isn't the knock it used to be. And the reason for that is because you have to, the game has changed fundamentally, especially at the collegiate level with NIL, and now as they come into the league in the NFL draft, is that you have to be able to connect to these players and connect to them as 21, 22, 23-year-old men. It's not just the old days of, hey, we're going to yell and drop and give me 50 wind sprints. It's how do I connect? How do I develop? And I think both of these guys have that ability to connect and develop because of who they've worked for in Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell, who are probably two of the best in the league at doing that, connecting to their players and developing their players.
I get that part, and it's not the age. I guess it bothers me. It's that they're young and they've never run anything. Like
Mhm.
you bring up Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, was able to say, "Look, I ran the Detroit offense. Look what I did." There's credibility in that. Same with
Yeah.
Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell. He's the best of both worlds. Yes, I ran an offense, but hey, I also played in the league, and so I know what it's like. When I'm to get your, feel hurt because you got body slammed and cracked it out, kicked out of you. With these two, I mean, I guess that's the worry. It's the unknown. You don't know what they're if they can relate to players in
Mhm.
terms of understanding, having gravitas. Like, okay, players will look at them and listen even when things are going bad.
Yeah.
And there's no track record of them, being in bad positions because they've never run anything. So again, how do you come to this if you're the Browns? You're like, okay, what happens when things get sideways? Can these two handle it, or is this going to be like Brian Callahan but Titans 2.0?
I think and that's a very valid point, is when things go sideways, how is it going to work? Grant Udinski's had that where he's gone sideways. When he tried to break into his coaching career, he was living in his car as a graduate assistant at Baylor. He was grinding from the moment he got into it. And that's going to resonate with players. Like this guy wanted it so bad. He lived in the parking lot of a Walmart in his car to make this work to get to the college level, let alone get to the NFL. And the players are going to resonate with that. And Nathan Shieldhouse on his side of the fence as well. You look at him, this is a guy that, still to this day holds the Illinois Fighting Illini record for career total offensive yards. So he's been at the highest level in the Big Ten, but unfortunately just couldn't make it work in the pros. But he's also dealt with players at the collegiate level when he was the assistant director of football operations in Illinois. So he knows how to handle that transition of, hey, you're going to be graduating into the league. Here's the things you're going to see. Here's what's going to happen. In addition to that, he's worked with Matt Campbell at Iowa State. And we've talked about how effective Matt Campbell is as a program builder in college and even in the NFL, where he was getting NFL looks. So I understand the apprehension of, hey, when this goes sideways, what's going to happen? But with who they've worked with, there's almost an assurance that they've picked up something either from Matt Campbell and Sean McVay or Matt Rule and Kevin O'Connell or Liam Cohen. They've picked up something. And even then, they're both young enough that you can afford to let them fail on the job. This is Cleveland Browns football. The expectations for Cleveland are in the tank. Let's be honest. Let's not mince words here. The expectations are to make the playoffs at this point, and even then, if you have a winning record, that's still acceptable. So to allow these two young coaches the ability to come in, learn on the job, figure things out when it gets rough while you build the roster around them. And then in 2027, 2028, when you have more talent and they've also learned through those tough times, now we have something here. But I love both of these options because it's playing the long game. It's not immediate gratification.
So who do you pick? You are Andrew Barry.
Mhm.
Or Jimmy Haslam. You're making a final call. Is it the guy who is a offensive coordinator in title only, but as you said, has grinded his way from day one, lived in his car, or do you go with Nathan Shieldhouse, who former quarterback, went to the Rams, but a little bit older, and as you said, still doesn't call plays, but he's at least he can relate to the guys in terms of, look, I've played in the big the Big Ten, Big 12, I at least know, what it takes to get to the top elite college level.
Yep. If it was me, honestly, being honest, I'd love to have them both. I'd love to have Udinski as a head
Yeah,
coach,
that's how
and
everybody says. I
then
love to, I love to have my cake and not get fat and eat it, but that's not how life works,
that's
Bill. So.
exactly. I mean, if we're calling a spade, give me both. Give me Udinski as the head coach and Shielhaas as the offensive coordinator. But no, I think if you're looking at what both of them can bring, I think Udinski is going to get more out of the current state of the roster, so you'll have a better chance of immediate success with him in terms of he's grinded from the bottom all the way up to this point, whereas Shieldhaas is more of the let's play the long game in terms of, hey, I know what it takes to get here. Let's take a little bit. The big thing, Shieldhaas has his bread and butter, and it's 11 personnel, 13 personnel, playing up tempo, a lot of pre-snap motion. Udinski can do a lot of different things. 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, up tempo, slow tempo, inside zone. He builds it around what we've got. So if you're looking at it that way, now you have a guy coming in and saying, okay, I have these ingredients, I can bake something. Whereas Shieldhaas has, hey, I have these recipes, but I may not have all the ingredients. So for me, I'm taking Udinski and making him the youngest head coach in the NFL.
Who do you think gets it? If you had to bet money on it, who do you think ends up getting this position?
If I had to bet money on it, I would think it goes to Grant Udinski. I think the fact that they have an interview set up with Grant Udinski tomorrow to a second interview. If it was going to be Nathan Shielhaas, we would have likely already potentially seen another Rooney Rule based interview, and then he would be the second, allowing him to get the job. I think the fact that we haven't seen that yet, they still want to see Shielhaas. But if I had to put my money on it based on what I'm hearing, based on everything coming out of the building, I think it's Grant Udinski by a hair, as in a 52-48 vote.
So let's talk about the old coach, Kevin Stefanski, Atlanta
Yes.
Falcons. We talked with Monty of he's a Giants pod about Jim Harbaugh, and everybody loves that. That's universally, it's an A higher. This feels like a B minus C plus. Like, yeah, it's nice. It's like when
Mhm.
you're a little you're 18-year-old. Like, oh, I'm gonna get I'm gonna get a Ferrari, but you get like a Saturn. You're like, yeah, it's nice. It's not what I want, but it's
Yeah.
nice. So that's how Falcons fans are probably feeling. Why him? Why was he the choice, despite the fact that they were touting, hey, we want to get a younger guy. We want to get somebody
Yeah.
who is cutting edge, and this feels just like a retread.
It 100% feels like a retread to me, and that's not sour grapes in Cleveland. My concern with Kevin Stefanski is everything I just talked about. He just hasn't adapted, and it feels like the game has passed him by. It feels like he's still stuck in his old ways of my scheme is the scheme and it works. He's had to give up play calling twice. Part of that was because they tried to make it work with Deshaun Watson. Part of that was he had to give it up to try to save his job. It just didn't work. I think he'll have more success in Atlanta, but not because of him, but because of the talent down there and Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I do have questions on how Michael Penix fits in Stefanski's scheme because Penix is more of a shotgun quarterback than he is in terms of being under center. And Stefanski doesn't run a whole lot of shotgun. A lot of his stuff is under center. And also, Stefanski's never worked with a left-handed quarterback. For me, this is right where you said it. It's a B minus, C plus grade. It feels like they wanted Harbaugh, didn't get it, and this is we have Harbaugh at home, is what this grade feels like.
How much should it worry Falcons fans that it was Matt Ryan who made the call, not the GM? They still are looking for a GM. So again, and I get it, but it's now the new rage. Hey, you have a famous player who wants to be part of the organization. Hey, you need him in his team present, and you could just have him, meet the be the shot caller of this whole organization. Should this worry you? I mean, if you're a Falcons fan, how much should it worry that Matt Ryan, who has no experience doing this, got basically the keys to the kingdom and is now he's picked Stefanski, and now him and Stefanski are gonna pick the GM.
Yep. It's the same conversation we had in Cleveland when Stefanski was hired. Haslam picked Stefanski, and then Stefanski picked the GM. So now you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to hire the supervisor, and then he's going to hire the manager that's supposed to oversee him. It's a very difficult dynamic because now the likely expectation is that Stefanski and the GM both report up to Matt Ryan rather than the other way around. That eventually is going to cause friction when it comes to talent, when it comes to roster building, because Stefanski is going to have his players that he wants. The GM is going to have his players that he wants. So I'm not so much concerned that Matt Ryan picked Kevin Stefanski. I am concerned that Matt Ryan picked the coach before the GM. The best teams we've seen have a top-down structure. The owner hires the GM or director of player personnel or whatever you want that title to be, and then that title to be director of player personnel GM hires the head coach hires the coaching staff. And then it all rolls up to it. So for Matt Ryan to hire Kevin Stefanski, and now you're going to go out and have him hire a GM, what happens when Kevin Stefanski doesn't agree with the GM's choices of a roster? What happens when they have a clash over Michael Penix? What happens when they have a clash over, hey, we need to cut these two players, but they're Kevin Stefanski's favorites in his scheme? Now you have clashes between the front office and the coaching staff. That would be concerning for me.
Like I'm looking at, before hired him, they had interviewed, as I said, Harbaugh, uh, Joe Brady, Anthony Weaver, Jesse Minter, Mike McDaniel, Clint Kubiak. Well, again, like, what is Matt Ryan seeing in him? And how much of it is also like, oh yeah, well, hey, Stefanski agrees to keep Jeff Ulbrich, who the players love, as defensive
Yeah.
coordinator. Like, if what are you hearing like in terms of like, was that a part of a sell that Stefanski went and said, look, I'll keep Ulbrich, make it easier, and hey, you know what? We can keep all the defensive staff, so you don't have to fire them.
Yeah, that was a lot of what I was hearing was that Matt Ryan wanted two things. He wanted continuity amongst his staff, so keeping Jeff Ulbrich, keeping the players happy, but also an experienced head coach. And odds are the only way you're going to get that is a guy like Kevin Stefanski or maybe even a Mike McDaniel, where it's an experienced head coach who, is willing to release some of his control in terms of what you're asking him to do. I mean, the big thing is, you're looking at now Kevin Stefanski, the head coach. Tommy Rees is already coming over as the offensive coordinator. Ulbrich is the defensive coordinator. Still looking for special teams coordinator. They could go and get Cleveland special teams coordinator Bubba Ventrone and basically take the entirety of the Cleveland staff down there, just not the defensive coordinator. And I think that is what made Stefanski so very attractive to Matt Ryan is that I can have an experienced head coach and also still have this continuity among my roster without rocking the entire boat and going through a full rebuild. This feels like trying to work on two timelines of a rebuild and a win now timeline, and it's going to have to be tight-roped very, very quickly by Stefanski and Matt Ryan, or it's going to blow up very quickly.
All right, this is the one where I get it. I understand the reasoning. It just feels sort of. I don't like it, but I understand it. So the Dolphins. At first, Jeff Halfley's the head coach. By the way, if you don't
Mhm.
know, the new GM of the Dolphins is also John Eric Sullivan, Packers
Yes.
Vice President of Player Personnel. And I understand the reasoning. GM picks the coach, and everybody's simpatico, synergy. Were you surprised they didn't just go for Harbaugh right off the bat and not play around with the GM? Just or is this something that you heard like the Dolphins want to do and not have another Chris Greer, several head coaches, or in this case, flip it around and John Harbaugh, several GMs and vice versa?
Yeah. Once Sullivan won the GM job in Miami, there were only two potential conversations, and it was Jeff Hafley or it was LaFleur if the Packers didn't come to an agreement with him. And once they came to an agreement with him, this was Jeff Hafley's job to lose. I like the fit because Miami did have issues on defense, and Jeff Hafley's going to come in and make them play harder on defense and make them play harder in cold weather. This is a guy that coming from Boston College, he knows how to build teams and succeed in cold weather as well as in Green Bay. My concern is who's his offensive coordinator going to be? This team offensively still has some major question marks. Is Tua Tagovailoa the guy? Is Tyreek Hill coming back or are they going to build around Jalen Waddle? What is the offensive line going to look like, especially on the outside in? You know, when you're in a division where you have Buffalo, who has their own issues, but is still the Buffalo Bills, and the New England Patriots, who are in the AFC Championship game, and even the New York Jets, who, they may not have the talent, but they've got the treasure trove of draft capital. What are you hanging your hat on in Miami? And right now, it's bringing what's made Green Bay successful for so long down to South Beach, and it's why I like the hire, but I have question marks on who's going to be on his staff because, again, the offensive coordinator for him is going to be key. And if he calls defensive plays, that helps save a lot. But who is your offensive coordinator going to be, and how are you going to get the most out of Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback?
See, I'm not big on Jaffley only because I saw him at Boston College and it was sort of first 2 years are pretty good. He had Frank Signetti, then Signetti leaves for Pittsburgh,
Mm.
and then it's oh crap, we're going then he goes with John McNulty, that fails. Then he goes fires McNulty, gets Shimko, and that didn't do too well either. So again, it's who does it? I mean, it's not like he knows a lot of people
Yeah.
in the NFL circle. So again, it's not as bad as Gerard Mayo, but there's sort of I worry if it's sort of like Gerard Mayo where he has no idea like who can be the offensive coordinator, who can call plays because his Rolodex is very thin. So who picks the offensive coordinator, and how much do you worry that if they have a good season, like even above average, that offensive coordinator is going to get better jobs and he'll leave.
That's the conversation we have with defensive minded head coaches. We've seen it in Florida, in Tampa Bay, right, with Todd Bowles, and he had, Liam Cohen, head coach job, Dave Canales, head coach job. Josh Grizzard was getting head coach looks, now has left the organization. When you have a defensive minded head coach, you're going to run this risk of losing your offensive coordinator year in, year out to the cycle as teams chase offensive coordinators. But if you're going to take a defensive minded guy at head coach, they've got to be able to motivate. We've seen Mike Vrabel. What has he done in New England? He's motivated. And I think Halfley can motivate these players. I think the biggest thing to take away from this, if you are a Dolphins fan, is that ownership is finally saying, hey, chasing the big splash hasn't gotten us anywhere. Chasing that big name, chasing the Harbaughs of the world, chasing the Tom Brady's as a quarterback of the world, it hasn't gotten us to where we want to get to. So let's build it the right way. Let's build this thing from the ground up with a head coach who can motivate, get the most out of our defense, bring in an offensive minded guy, bring in a young offensive play caller who can grow with Tua Tagovailoa, or if after next year Tua is not our guy, we go out into the class of 2027 that's expected to be very deep at quarterback and get our guy and build this thing up the right way.
Why do you like Halfley so much? Because to me, it's like okay, he's a nice coordinator, but I mean, the Packers weren't known as for its great defense. They had pieces, but there were times you looked and went, okay, they're bipolar. They'll shut down one team and then they'll play like the Cowboys and give up 40 and they look lost. So again, what is about Halfley for you that you look and go, yeah, this is a good hire, despite the fact he's been average to below average as a head coach and defense coordinator. He spent 2 years at one place. That's it. That's the longest tenure he's had. He's been a guy who is kind of a nomad.
And that's the thing. It for me, I look at guys who can be flexible enough to build their schemes around their talent. And Halfley in his introductory presser already said that. This is a guy that's going to build his schemes around the talent he has. And the other big thing is his offensive philosophy. He's going to build around the quarterback, surround him with weapons, the offensive line, the wideouts, the running backs. And yes, a lot of that is coach speak, but you watch how Green Bay built their team. They built it around a young quarterback with Jordan Love. They built the offensive line in front of him. They added weapons at wide receiver. They gave him running backs. And then when they were ready to go all in, they went and got Micah Parsons. So they were not risk averse and said, well, maybe we're not ready yet. Maybe we're not ready yet. No, when they felt they were ready, they went all in. So Jeff Halfley coming over from that, you now have that same mindset of, okay, let's build our scheme around our players. Let's build for our team, not build our team. And then when we're ready to take that next step, let's take that next step. And I understand there's concerns again about, has he really been the most effective play caller? His time at Boston College left a lot to be desired. But ultimately, if I'm looking at head coaches, the big things I want are, can you motivate? Can you get the most out of your talent? And when you build your offensive and defensive schemes, are you building it just to build a scheme, or are you actually building it around your talent to get the most out of them?
This hire I hate. It sucks ass and swallows. And look, let's first start off with the basically the elephant in the room. It was down to him and then Matt Nagy, and then Titans fans just went berserk when they thought Nagy was getting hired, and as they said, the temperature was taking in the room, and that's not good. I mean, I get it. I guess sometimes fans aren't happy. They want, this, and then they're going to get this. But should that worry you when you hear about, like, oh yeah, well, the Titans GM Borgonzi and Chad Brinker and even Amy Strunk Adams realize, hey, this might be too much to sell. Like, if that's the case, and why are you running the team? Just let the fans run. Have them do the draft. They can vote, and that way they can vote for whatever the hell they want. That way you could blame the fans.
Yeah. For me, this is the most confusing hire thus far because for the Titans, the big focus in their head coach was who's going to get the most out of Cam Ward as a quarterback. Who's going to develop Cam Ward as a quarterback? Not necessarily be an offensive play caller, but develop him as a quarterback. Robert Saleh hasn't developed a quarterback. He had Sam Darnold, and then they moved on from Sam Darnold and got into Zach Wilson, and still struggled to develop as a quarterback. And it's a great fit defensively. He's going to turn around that Tennessee Titans defense and get the most out of that defense. And now he's going to be the defensive play caller, which he even admitted that he should have been back in New York, but gave it up to try to focus as a CEO. And then nothing ended up working in New York, but now at least the defensive play calling is going to work. But for me, I struggle to see the vision here. Just like with Halfley in Miami, in order to make this a win as a hire, I need to know who Salah's offensive coordinator is, because that's going to be the guy that's responsible for developing your number one overall pick last year in Cam Ward. If you're expecting Robert Saleh, who's been a predominantly defensive minded head coach and has never shown a propensity to develop a quarterback, develop Cam Ward, we are going to have a problem in Tennessee. And in 3 years, we're going to be right back in this vicious cycle. So for me, right now, of all the hires, this is the most confusing because it's the exact opposite of what they needed. And it feels like they're trying to make up for letting Mike Vrabel walk by bringing in a fiery, defensive minded play caller in Robert Saleh.
From what you've heard, why did they hire him? Like again, they brought in Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy. That should have been. I mean, that almost was like a layup. Hey, you get Mike McCarthy. He's won at every place he's been to. He knows how to deal with dysfunctional owners and drama. Like that's a guy you could go perfect. Brian Daboll, you brought him in. Okay, well, no, it's great, but still, he's won a playoff game. He turned for Giants around the first year till the quarterback crapped the bed. Even Nagy has he had a winning season, actually two decent seasons for the Bears. Mahomes has credited him with his development. It's like, what is it about Salah that they fell in love with? Because I'm looking, going, he was horrible in New York. So is it the 49ers gig? I get he was a great DC in San Fran, but What is that? If that's a selling point, what the hell are they looking at?
I think it's a little bit of paralysis by analysis in Tennessee because they wanted a guy who was a leader of men type like Dan Campbell, who was a defensive mastermind type like Mike Vrabel. They wanted that mold, but they didn't need that mold. What they needed was a guy who could develop a quarterback, who could develop an offensive scheme to get the most out of Cam Ward, and then you hire a defensive coordinator to get the most out of your defense. But you just took a quarterback number one overall, and now you hire a defensive minded head coach. It just feels like a bit like putting the cart before the horse. And yes, I understand that they could look at some names for offensive coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury, like Brian Dable, like Bobby Slowick, like even Arthur Smith, or even Adam Stenovich as well. But for me, I get where you're going in terms of, hey, we need to get that leader of men type, that defensive fiery type, and Saleh did that in San Francisco and in New York with the Jets. There was one thing he could hang his hat on, and that was having a top flight caliber defense. But you didn't just take a defensive end number one overall. You took a quarterback. Your clock is ticking to get the most out of Cam Ward, and it just feels like this hire is, hey, we messed up letting Mike Vrabel walk, and he ended up in New England, and now they're in the AFC Championship. So let's make up for that by getting Robert Saleh, who's like Mike Vrabel in a lot of the good ways. But again, I still struggle to see the vision here because I don't know who's going to develop Cam Ward at this point. And until I know that, I can't say this is a good hire.
Like he said, Brian Daboll, and just like with Chargers with Mike Daniel, like, oh yeah, we they're here, but they're still interviewing for jobs. But don't worry, they're gonna be here, but they're still interviewing for head coaching jobs. Like if Daboll goes, like again, what happens if he has to go to Plan C, which Stenovich might get hired in Miami, Arthur Smith might follow somebody else. I mean, it's just
Yep.
again like. Should they have just gone with Matt Nagy and swallowed it, or again, is this the where the owner looks and goes, no, I don't like get booed. I don't like getting
Yeah.
booed.
I with the GM, obviously Matt Nagy was one of the finalists because of their relationship in Kansas City between Borgonzi and Matt Nagy, and he was one of the finalists. I understand not wanting to go that route because, we just had the conversation about play callers. Matt Nagy's not the full-time play caller in Kansas City. His time in Chicago isn't looked at as the greatest because he didn't really develop Mitch Trubisky the way you'd want your number two overall pick to develop. For me, it just felt like the Titans didn't get the top flight coordinator choices they wanted. Obviously they wanted Harbaugh, but Harbaugh was never coming to Nashville. The Titans job is just like the Browns job, and just like the Cardinals job as well. It's one of the least desirable jobs. The best part about this Titans job is the division it's in, which is very winnable year over year, and the fact that you get number one overall pick in Cam Ward. Beyond that, the offensive line needs help. The defense is atrocious front to back, being polite about it. There's no number one wide receiver that you could really hang your hat on, so to speak. There's talent, but there's not a true number one dynamo. So offensively and defensively, you need help because of how bad it's been in terms of drafting in Tennessee. The cupboard is bare. So outside of the division and Cam Ward, there wasn't a whole lot to attract candidates here, and I think that's why we ended up in this position with Matt Nagy as a finalist, and why they ended up going with Robert Saleh, which is
Like I'll
something you can
even
hang your
interrupt.
hat on.
Sorry to interrupt, but why not Mike McCarthy? You had him in the building. You interviewed him. I mean, it just feels like Robert Saleh is going to be the ultimate yes man. He's going to be fiery, as he said, like Mike Vrabel, but he won't rock the boat. No, no,
Yep.
no. Robert Saleh knows his place. He went through that in New York, so he's going to be nice and polite, and he'll let the GM do all the picking. Just again, like if you were Borgonzi, why not just hire Mike McCarthy, who, as you said, he's led men before. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won everywhere. Dealt with knows how to deal with difficult owners,
Mhm.
just like Jerry Jones. So why was McCarthy not the guy when that just screamed? Yes, get Mike McCarthy in there. He'll develop Cam Ward. He did it with Aaron Rodgers. Did it with Dak Prescott. He could do it again.
I think it boils down to the Mike McCarthy hire is kind of like a Sean McDermott hire. You have to be closer to the playoffs and a Super Bowl than the number one overall pick. Again, Mike McCarthy, they had him in the building and it's a conversation to have, but we also have to have a conversation. They had McCarthy in the building, but are we sure McCarthy would have wanted this job with how far away the Titans are, just like how far away the Browns are, just how far away the Cardinals are? McCarthy feels more like a, hey, Baltimore, if they didn't hire a mentor, or a Pittsburgh, where they're a few pieces away, a few tweaks away, and they're right back in the thick of things.
I'm glad you brought that because Jesse Minter is a Baltimore head coach. In other news, water
Mhm.
is wet. I mean,
Yes.
and I know that, my good friend Mike Frischella said, oh, he would never do that. He would stab, the Harbaughs in the back. But this just felt that unless Brian Flores was dropped his lawsuit, this felt like just, okay, this is going to be the guy. This is
Yep.
a Ravens guy through and through. I like the hire. What is your thoughts? I mean, is it also risky though with him because hey, he's always been a defense coordinator, never an offensive guy. So was this the right hire? Or are you worried about this hire, or is he just the perfect Baltimore guy for that roster, that culture?
It feels a lot like they lost Harbaugh, and this is trying to recreate Harbaugh in the aggregate, to use the Moneyball phrase. This is a guy, he worked on the Ravens defense before in 2017 to 2020, turned around that Chargers defense. He's a player's coach, he's a good teacher of the game. But like I just talked about with Saleh, like I've talked about with Halfley, when you have defensive minded head coaches, the first conversation out of your mouth is who's coaching the offense. Who is going to get the most out of Lamar Jackson? And I know there's obviously rumors, Florio talked about it, where he could be gone to the Raiders. And if he is, then who's the quarterback in Baltimore? But again, when you have a defensive minded head coach, you can't give it an A until you know who the play caller is. Because if Jesse Minter goes out and he gets a young play caller who struggles to get the most out of Lamar Jackson, he's going to be gone in a few years. If he gets an excellent play caller that then gets head coaching jobs, now he's got to figure it out again. It it feels just like the Salah hire and just like the Halfley hire. It feels like they went safe because there was not a lot of top tier, top flight offensive head coaching candidates this cycle. A lot of the candidates were very defensive minded, and the best offensive minded ones were guys like Grant Udinski and Nathan Shielhaas and names like that, and Mike McCarthy and even Kevin Stefanski, if you wanted to call him one of the better offensive head coaching candidates. But for me, I think it's when you lose a guy like Harbaugh, bringing in a Jesse Minter helps you stabilize things. But I don't know if this raises the ceiling. I think this keeps the floor intact, but I don't think this raises the ceiling for Baltimore.
I see. I guess I disagree just because it's Baltimore. So again, I get what you're saying with that, but with those kind of players, with those personalities, with those defensive guys and even offensive guys.
Mhm.
Would putting guys like Mike McDaniel, Shieldhouse, Udinsky, or even Clint Kubiak just be too much? Like, I could see that team like just they could walk all over them. You need somebody to sort of rein them in because you have big personalities, very colorful characters, and if
Yeah.
it's a very mild-mannered offensive coordinator, they're gonna look at him and go, "Oh my God, this guy's an a-hole. Why is he here? We gotta get rid of this guy." Like that needs a tough man to sort of rein in these sort of tough, sometimes stupid or dirty teams.
And that's fair, and that's what exactly what Minter can do. But again, the conversation we had with Baltimore is yes, they had issues on defense, but a lot of those issues were related to injury, not necessarily boneheaded mistakes. Whereas offense, it just felt like the offense just either struggled or was disjointed or not healthy or bad talent or a combination thereof. And when you bring in a guy like Jesse Minter, it doesn't move me offensively. And if I'm trying to maximize the most out of Lamar Jackson while he's in the league and trying to get the most out of him, I'm going to pair him with an offensive minded head coach. Now the problem is that there really isn't an offensive minded head coach that, can get the most out of them. But I I think this is going to be one of those things where he's going to constantly be compared to John Harbaugh. He's also going to be constantly compared to Mike McDonald, who's had a lot of success in Seattle, but also at the same time, he's got to be his own man. And I think it's going to be very hard for him to do so, considering he was just here in 2017 to 2020. It's going to be very hard for him to not fall back into the Baltimore defensive coordinator rather than being the Baltimore head coach.
Does that help though? It's a double-edged sword, as you said, but he's Timu with John Harbaugh. He's Timu Mike McDonald. Does it help though that he knows this system? He knows what goes on at Baltimore, so at least he understands. Okay, I'm not some guy like Udinsky, Shieldhouse, even Mike McCarthy, who I have no idea what these guys can do. I got to learn that as I'm going along. He knows the room. He knows the players. He knows exactly what Lamar can and can't do. He knows what the Baltimore Ravens are drafting because it's still that's Eric DeCosta's team. He
Mhm.
just like Howie Roseman with the Eagles. DeCosta runs the show. He's the guy who
Yeah.
makes plays, drafts the players. So is this sort of perfect for him? And like, okay, we know at least what this guy knows about us. He knows everything here. It's more synergy. We don't have to worry about him, teachable moments on the job.
Yeah, I think that's what this is the best of both worlds if you're going to bridge the two of we want a guy that we don't need to teach on the job like a Sean McDermott or obviously they had John Harbaugh but like those elder statesmen but also they don't want a coach who's 60 years old plus. They want a younger minded coach that they can grow with and I think this is a best of both worlds. But again, until I see who his offensive coordinator is and who's going to get the most out of this offense in Baltimore, I just struggle to give this thing anything higher than a B. It's still a great hire. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the perfect slam dunk home run. Baltimore's right back in the thick of the Super Bowl conversation hire right now.
Who do you think will be the offensive coordinator? That's because that's also the question. Like, at least with Halfley, you said, okay, well, it's probably going to be somebody from the Packer tree.
Mhm.
And I don't like it from Robert Saleh, but he said, hey, it's going to be, Brian Daboll if he doesn't get a head coaching gig. Who do you see Minter going to? Because he's worked with, Jim Harbaugh. He's worked with John Harbaugh. Is there a chance he could just go, look, you know, Monken's going to be back. He's going to be the OC because I know him. Monken's worked with him. I mean, could that be in play, or do you think Monken's going straight to New York?
I think it could be in play with Monken going to New York. I think, that's could be in play. A name that I think could be in play if he doesn't get the Buffalo Bills head coaching job is Joe Brady in Baltimore. I think if you're wanting to take that major swing, Joe Brady would be a very good fit. I could also see Cliff Kingsbury here in Baltimore as well. A guy who's worked with mobile quarterbacks, who's gotten the most out of mobile quarterbacks, would be a very excellent fit. But I think if they bring back Munkin, I'm a little concerned that hey, we're just running this back with a younger Harbaugh and Jesse Minter. So I would love to see them go outside the organization the biggest name that if I had to put my finger on it today and say this is going to be the guy that follows him from Los Angeles, I would really I would probably lean in on Marcus Brady, who was the passing game coordinator in Los Angeles. 15 years of coaching experience, coached at the NFL level for the last 7 years, has helped develop Justin Herbert. You could also look at Shane Day as well as the quarterbacks coach in Los Angeles. He's worked with Justin Herbert. But I think if you're wanting to get a guy for Jesse Minter, I think your best options are take the swing and try to get a Joe Brady type if he doesn't land in Buffalo or a Cliff Kingsbury.
Let's go to the final topic, and this is going to be one we're going to be debating for probably over the year.
Mhm.
That's right. Well, Bills fans are sort of it's happy, sad, scared. We're not sure. So Sean McDermott got fired, and we
Yes.
can that'll be a different topic for a different time. But they had the press conference. And Terry Begula talked, and first he said, "Hey, Brandon Beane, you're getting a promotion. You are now the team president. You are, in charge of everything here." And then they basically said, "Well, what's success? We've been to the playoffs the last 6 years. You know, when people said, when he's turned around, there were even t comments about, well, Keon Coleman, hey, that was Sean McDermott's fault. It wasn't Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane, hey, he just went along with the coach. This whole thing looked like a crap show from day one, and I get it. Shout out to Jim Wilkins over the draft professor. He's like, hey, Terry Begill's going through a lot. His wife, he's done a lot for Buffalo. Let's start off here. If you were an established head coach, how much do you look at this Buffalo job and go, ugh? I
Yep.
love Josh Allen.
I
These guys scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, I 100% with you on that boat. If I'm looking at this job, that presser where Pegula basically pinned the Keon Coleman issue on the previous coaching staff, it's twofold. Number one, it now shows the players in the locker room, hey, if we don't align with the organization, we're going to be thrown right under the bus. So now you're not going to play nearly as hard for them. And then number two, it also shows the next coach is going to have to align with Brandon Beane's vision, whether they want to or not. And they're on the hot, if they don't, they're on the hot seat from the word go. And that's not, you're not going to get an established head coach from that. You're not going to get a Harbaugh. You're not going to get, the higher end names, a Mike McCarthy. If you're Buffalo, you're now resigning yourself to folks that have been in the building before that have worked with Brandon Beane. And for me, that's not going to get you better than what you had in Sean McDermott. That's going to get you a name like Brian Dable. That's going to get you a name, maybe Davis Webb if you want to swing young. But again, we've talked about it. You're down, it's a downgrade. To go from Sean McDermott, who had success with the roster that has holes. The issue is that roster that he put together, it has holes. When he's had conversations several times about, hey, you don't have that top wide receiver that's got juice. You know, offensively, there's questions along the interior of the offensive line. Running back, you paid James Cook, yes, but who's running back two? You know, that shows that you're having issues building a roster around a top flight quarterback, and he didn't maximize Josh Allen when he had him on his rookie deal. And now you're in this scenario of we didn't maximize him on his rookie deal, so now we have to scramble. I just being honest, I find it very hard to see any top end head coach wanting this Buffalo gig after that presser because it just shows, hey, if I don't align with what Brandon Beane's vision of this team is, I'm done. And that's kind of what you want when you want an organizational structure from the owner to the GM to the GM to the head coach, but also the things that you talk about like, hey, we didn't really want Keon Coleman. He was a coach's decision. You don't say those types of things in a presser. I understand you have a lot going on in your personal life. If that's the case, don't do the presser. That is absolutely an option. But to say that about that player, number one, now that player and his agent are going to want out. And guess what? Agents talk. When you go into free agency, what is the first conversation they're going to have? Well, hey, they didn't want Keon Coleman and they said as much in a presser. What happens when they don't want you? And that's just it's very tough for Buffalo to be able to get something better than what they had at this point because of that. And honestly, it's probably going to be Joe Brady or Brian Dable, and it's going to make them long for the days of Sean McDermott.
Here's the worst part. We have, I mean, as they said, oh, it was McDermott. He wanted the player. We have video of Brandon Beane, just glossing over Keon Coleman before the draft as he's running that combine. He's like, oh yeah, hey, ran a 4.54. Ooh, great. That means it'll be easier for us to draft him. Like he's on camera. I mean, what
Yes.
even Pagula should have realized. Like, oh crap, wait a minute here. We were on Hard Knocks. Damn it. They're gonna use that footage. Like, again, why didn't Bean just say, look, hey, look, Yeah, we invested a lot. We took a swing, like, because again, even if I'm, as I said, if I'm Joe Brady, I'm looking at this going, I don't know, wait a minute here. Like, how does Brandon B now have any credibility when everybody knows you're a big fat stinky liar?
Yeah. The two biggest things is on draft night, Brandon Beane went to bed, and he's even quoted it in Hard Knocks. I went to bed that night saying it's Keon unless someone blows us away. Barring us someone offering something stupid, we're taking Keon Coleman. That's not the coaching staff. That sounds like it's your pick. But the big thing that we have to ask out of the 56 players drafted by Brandon Beane, only two of them have made the Pro Bowl. We have to have a conversation. Are we sure he's a talent evaluator at its finest? I just, I struggle to see how you can blame someone else for your shortcomings when you're on Hard Knocks saying, yeah, I'm going to bed and it's Keon or bust unless I get a major crazy offer. And, I just, it's a struggle to see it. And I understand that Pagula's going through a lot. I understand he's got a lot going on. But it just seems like Brandon Beane is taking the wheel of this ship and he's steering it into an iceberg. And it's going to cause some ripple effects, whether it be this season with the head coaching hire or at the end of next season when they potentially miss the playoffs. It's not going to end well in Buffalo.
This is sort of a look back, not just a Buffalo, but the league in general. And you covered this here.
Mhm.
Why is it that all these owners just it's almost like they'll fire a coach quickly, but a GM, oh no, we can't get rid of a GM. Hey, we gotta give him another chance. They'll give him
Mhm.
two, three. Like Mickey Loomis still has it, is still there in friggin' New Orleans, despite the fact that team has been bad. Andrew Barry
Yeah.
still has a chance. Hey, Chris Ballard hasn't gotten fired. I mean, they just drag their heels on these guys. Even, you know, Trent Baalke. It took the guy they wanted, the coach, Liam Cohen, go, nope, I'm going back to being OC unless you fire him. And then they finally fired him. Like, what is it about these owners that the GM is almost like, no, we can't let go of our baby. This is our firstborn. We can't let go of firstborn baby.
The part of it stems from when you have a GM that's responsible for the day in, day out minutia of the organization. It's very difficult to find someone who can jump right in and take over that and fill over that once you fire your guy. The second thing is owners live in ROI. They live in finances. They live in revenue. And if your team is generating revenue year over year, you're okay with losing. You're okay with losing because guess what? The checks are still rolling in. It's when you go from the black to the red that, okay, now we have a problem on our hands. Okay, now we have an issue on our hands. And it's very tough to have owners that are saying, that will say, hey, I don't care about money. I want to win. And you've started to see kind of this little shift back towards it. It's been slow, but you're going to start to see more of it. Obviously, in Cleveland with Andrew Barry, if he doesn't get this head coaching hire right, this will be his first and his only head coaching hire. He didn't hire Stefanski. Obviously, if Brandon Beane doesn't get his head coaching hire right, this is going to be his last go round. Chris Ballard, how he's still employed is mind numbing to me, but I understand it because of the simple fact that if you fire Ballard, then you have to likely fire Steichen. Do you want to move on from Steichen after all you've had to give him at the quarterback position? That's the conversation that you have to play is how much of it is you're expecting your five-star chef to make a dish with poor ingredients provided by your shipper, and your shipper is your GM. They provide the ingredients, the head coach or the chef cooks the meal. If you have bad ingredients, it's a bad meal. So who do you hold accountable? The chef who used poor ingredients or the person who delivered them on the truck and the GM? And I think that's part of the issue as well.
How much is it also? they're friendly, like because they'll hang out. So hey,
Mhm.
hobnob with the GM. They're talking. He laughs at his jokes, even though the jokes aren't funny. And the owner never sees the coach because the coach is in the owner's box or with the owner. So
Yeah.
unfortunately does that crop up where I'm guessing that Pagula and Brandon Bean have a nice, good friendly relationship, and he just won't fire his buddy. I like Brandon. That's my jokes. And he's always asking me how I'm doing, and I get it. It sounds corny, but these guys, as we've seen with Bob Kraft, as we've seen with Jim Irsay, as we've seen with even Arthur Blank, these GMs and presidents, they almost become like part of the family, and they don't want to get rid of the family member.
That's what it feels like a little bit is that he's comfortable, right? He even said it himself. He's like, I felt like we hit the proverbial playoff wall just year after year, 13 seconds, missed field goals, the catch. I just sensed, where do we go from here with what we have? Why is it okay to accept what we have? Why is it not okay to say, hey, where do we go from here? Question mark. Not where do we go from here with what we have. What we have indicates that you don't think there's a problem in the building, or if you do think there's a problem in the building, it's not with the guy you hired. I truly believe that in order, if you're going to fire a head coach that's had success, then you either A, have to say it's because truly the head coach failed because our GM provided him with excellent talent and he just failed. B, there was an external factor that caused the issue. In like Cleveland, for example, the external factor being Paul DePodesta having his hands on everything that Andrew Barry did. Or C, you just don't want to win. And if that's the case, then fine, but you need to explain to your fans why you fired a head coach who had so much success, granted, struggled in the playoffs, but also you struggled to give him the full range of talent. I mean, again, talk going back to the Keon Coleman pick, the very next pick, Lad McConkey, and look at how well he's done with the Chargers. You look at, for example, Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta in that same draft. It just seems like miss after miss after miss has piled up, and Brandon Bean hasn't owned up to it. And now it's going to be another hire internally, so to speak, of Brian Dable or Joe Brady, names that they're comfortable with because they want to control everything. And I understand wanting to control everything. It's your team as an owner, it's your job as a GM, but also if you can't trust your people to do the job correctly, then why hire them in the first place?
Final question before I let you go. First, so where does Sean McDermott go? Because it's you said before, it's like Mike McCarthy. He's not going to just take any job because
Mhm.
he's a guy who is a proven winner. But like McCarthy, do either of these guys have enough stroke where they can go to the next GM and go, look, or the team owner go, look, I'm not going to this job unless you fire the GM. I'm not, I want to call the shots. Like, is he in sort of that Mike McCarthy sort of, phantom zone, or is he more like Mike Vrabel, where the right team will go, yeah, we'll fire this GM also. We'll put you in charge. Hey, we saw what you did in Buffalo. Hey, we want that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing when you're looking at Mike McDermott, or sorry, excuse me, Sean McDermott, is the conversation has to become how much of roster control do you want to give him versus how much is he deserving of that roster control. For me, Sean McDermott is one of those guys that you can have his voice in the room, but he shouldn't be the full on final decider. You have to have a strong-minded GM that can be his check and balance. The other concern is Sean McDermott is not a guy that comes in and rebuilds a team. This is, Sean McDermott, 51 years old. He's on the older end of things. Right now, the best job for him, for me, it just seems like it's Pittsburgh. It just feels like a Pittsburgh Steelers type of hire where Pittsburgh goes out, they get a very good defensive-minded head coach who comes in, helps build that defensive-minded team back up. They figure out the quarterback position. The other one and this one I don't think is as likely, not because of I don't think it's as likely, but the Las Vegas Raiders still have an opening. And if I'm a head coach, the most attractive option on the market is an option where I can go in. I have some defensive talent already in Max Crosby. I have a few pieces here and there throughout the roster, but I have the number one overall pick, and I can go get my quarterback in Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. And then I also have the ability to spend a little bit and add some pieces throughout the team. And now I have options. So for me, I think it's Pittsburgh first. I think Las Vegas second. I don't think he's as high on Las Vegas as he is on Pittsburgh because it is Las Vegas. And you look at that division that it's in with the Chargers, with the Broncos, with the Chiefs, probably one of the toughest divisions in football. But if you wanted a job that says, hey, we're going to give you the keys to the kingdom and we're going to let you have the number one overall pick and you're going to have more of a voice in talent decisions, Vegas is a pretty attractive option if you're Sean McDermott.
Last question for let you go. So we're always on the Joe Burrow watch. Like, okay, when does he snap and just go, I'm out of here, trade me? Do we need to start looking at Josh Allen going, okay, we might need to get to a Josh Allen watch. And granted, he's not there and he loves Buffalo. He loves, the town. He loves everything. It's driving him insane that Patrick Mahomes has three Super Bowl rings. He has none. That Drake May is probably a game away from being into the AFC Super Bowl, and he's at home. That wide receiver room has been a mess ever since Stephon Diggs got traded, and they still haven't fixed it. He's done everything they've asked, and they still have not added do they Bills have to worry that eventually Josh is going to look and go maybe 3 or 4 years? I need out. You guys aren't serious. I need to win a Super Bowl, and if you guys can't do it, I will trade me to LA, trade me to friggin' no, hell, trade me to Green Bay. I don't care. I can't be in a place that just isn't serious.
Yeah. The conversation starts and ends with his contract, and you look at the numbers. If he's traded before June 1st in 2026, $84 million dollars in dead money. 2027 is $52 million dollars in dead money. 2028 is $29 million dollars in dead money, but you actually would save $29 million dollars off of the cap. So that would be the conversation point is in 2028 before March 17th, where 14 million of that is guaranteed for 2029. So by that point, he's 32 years old. By that point, they're also in their new stadium. I think we have to have that conversation, but I don't think it's a conversation that Josh Allen has. I think it's a conversation his agent has. And I think his agent says, "Hey, if you don't start making it better for my client, I'm going to turn up the heat." Does that mean immediately I request a trade? No. But maybe it's we start hearing things about, "Hey, Josh Allen's looking at life after football." Right? That's the first press release that comes from his agent that says, "Hey, Josh Allen is looking at life after football." And the same thing if we see it from Joe Burrow, if we see it from Lamar Jackson, if we see it from Patrick Mahomes, we saw it from Jason Kelsey, we saw it from Travis Kelsey. Hey, X player is thinking about life after football. When you see that, that means your clock is ticking. And if I'm Brandon Beane and I'm Terry Pagula, if I'm Beane and I'm still here and I hear, hey, Josh Allen is looking at life after football, he is not long for this organization because he could just up and retire tomorrow. Same thing for Joe Burrow. He could walk up to Cincinnati ownership tomorrow and say, hey, I'm done. I've had enough. It's not fun for me anymore. I'm out. And then you're left high and dry. So if I'm them, I'm trying to do everything I can to maximize the time that I have with Josh Allen. The problem is because of poor drafting and what they've done, they're actually 11 million over the cap for 2026 and only 34 million under the cap for 2027. Short of getting aggressive and making some moves, there's not much they can add to this team. It's pretty much topped out and capped out. So again, do I think Josh Allen requests a trade? Absolutely not. Do I think we hear his agent say, hey, Josh Allen is looking at life after football? Absolutely. I could see another season like this one where there's an early playoff exit. Absolutely.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we love to have him on the show. I give you from Spark Scouting, the podcast, Cleveland Browns, and everything. I give you it is once again NFL insider and Cleveland Browns. Let's say truth sayer. I give you Bill Sparks. So, Bill, once again, where can fans check you out at? Where is the Twitter,
Yeah.
Instagram? Where's the YouTube channel, the podcast channel? You probably have a Substack also. Like, where can fans check you out at?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find all of my content over on X at Spark Scouting. Also have a Substack for all of my written content. It is Spark Scouting, the NFL Comp King. Just go on to Substack, search Spark Scouting. You'll see me pop up. Also an analyst for the Barking Browns YouTube channel. If you go over to youtube.com, search Barking Browns, you'll see us pop up. We have regular episodes. Also over on TikTok as well, on the Barking Browns TikTok, as well as my own TikTok at Spark Scouting. But if you want to find all of those links and more, just head over to X at Spark Scouting. I've got it all there in my bio.
Bill Sparks of Sparks Scouting, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, always on a pleasure. Have you on the show. We come back. A lot more going on here. Only on it's Last Call. Last Call with the alcohol. Only on the Last Call Podcast.com.